What's up? I'm Ara, aka I Eat Zebra, and welcome to the channel. In today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down the events of the pilot episode of the new Marvel series Loki, titled Glorious Purpose. I'm going to be uncovering a few Easter eggs as well as making some predictions along the way. So let's get to it. We open up to the title card showing we are in New York City in the year 2012. This series has a lot to do with time travel and multiverse traveling. So the letters displaying the location fall into place, similar to the old school train station boards that showed when the next train for each destination was arriving or departing. Then it moves down a timeline to the year 2012. It is like inputting coordinates for time travel by using location and time. The scene we cut to is when Loki has been captured by the Avengers after the Battle of New York in the first Avengers movie. We saw the same scene play out in EndGame during the time heist, and now we are getting that from Loki's perspective. They added an additional close-up of Loki on the elevator from the version they showed in EndGame. I believe this was just additional footage they had from that film. The rest of the scene plays out like it does in EndGame, with Loki taking possession of the Tesseract and fleeing the scene. The screen cuts to black as we hear Thor asking, "Where is Loki?" Again, this is from Loki's perspective, so I believe this is the moment he's traveling through space, and that is the last thing he hears. The Marvel logo appears in green and gold, which are known to be Loki's colors. Marvel did something similar with WandaVision, but in black and white to showcase the old television show style. Moving back along, we see Loki's crash landing in the Gobi Desert, mirroring the same scene in Iron Man 1 when Tony Stark does the same. In this episode, Loki gives a speech where he says that he is burdened with a glorious purpose, where the title of this episode comes from. The Mongolians present at the scene have no idea what Loki is talking about since he is not speaking in their language. He is interrupted as the Minutemen arrive on the scene, followed by Hunter B-15. If you are like me and are a big fan of HBO series Lovecraft Country, you will recognize Wunmi Mosako, who plays Ruby Baptiste in that series. If you have not seen the show, I highly recommend it. It was my favorite show that came out last year. I am actually currently reading the book by Matt Ruff, and even though I'm not finished, it is an absolute thrill to read. So check both of those out. Now that we've taken that detour, let's get back to Loki. Hunter B-15 arrives through a portal and states that the variant, Loki, has been identified and he is now under arrest from the Time Variance Authority, better known as the TVA, for crimes against the sacred timeline. She then hits Loki in the face and is able to slow the speed down to 1/16th of a second, so he feels every little bit of pain in real time, while she places a power-restricting collar on him. The Minutemen on the scene set down a device to reset the timeline, and they then transport Loki back to the TVA. When they arrive at the TVA, we can spot a Skrull wearing a tracksuit. Some people have been speculating this Skrull could be from Captain Marvel, as the Tesseract featured in that movie as well. We also see some guy whose dad apparently works at Goldman Sachs, and for some reason he thinks that means anything to the TVA. At the desk, fans of The Good Place can see Pillboy, played by Eugene Cordero. Loki tries to run off from Hunter B-15, but is then zapped back into the location he was just in, based by reversing time. A similar device features in Rick and Morty, which makes sense as the series writer Matt Waldron also writes on the show Rick and Morty. Heads up, the new season of Rick and Morty starts Sunday, June 20th, and who knows, if you're lucky, I might cover that as well. But when they go to check in with the clerk at the desk, Hunter B-15 hands him the Tesseract to log as evidence. Loki tells him to be careful, and the desk clerk mockingly comments that the Tesseract sounds dumb. And if we're gonna be honest, it is kind of a dumb sounding name. Loki is then pushed into a room with a creepy smiley robot that reminds me of Stan Lee in Thor Ragnarok, when he gives Thor his makeover on Sakaar. Similar to that, this weird machine zaps Loki's clothes, revealing a very ripped Tom Hiddleston. Loki's then dropped into a new room with a TVA prisoner suit now on. This is where he's requested to sign a stack of papers confirming that it is everything he's ever said, ever. For a person that's been alive for at least 1,000 years and loves to talk, the pile does seem a bit light, but Loki eventually signs and is then dropped into another room. Loki then encounters a TVA clerk at what appears to be a metal detector of sorts, but for your soul. And the clerk asks him, to your knowledge, are you not fully robotic, born organic, and possess what many cultures would call a soul? Loki questions why many people wouldn't know that they are not robots if they were robots. This is actually what many LMDs, which we have seen in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., can experience, that they indeed do not know that they are AI. Loki then walks through the machine and has a scan of his temporal aura taken and is sent off to another. He is then in a hall with the guy whose dad apparently works at Goldman Sachs, where they both are instructed to take a ticket as they wait in line. Loki takes his ticket, then declares, "This is a mistake. I shouldn't be here." When we hear the voice of Miss Minutes mockingly say, "You're probably thinking, this is a mistake. I shouldn't be here." And we get to my favorite part of this episode, the animated clip going over the history of the TVA, their purpose, what they currently do, and why Loki and other variants are in custody. There is a lot to break down in this short, so let's dive on in. Long ago, there was a vast multiversal war where varying timelines were battling it out, almost leading to the destruction of everything, until the Time Keepers emerged. They then condensed all the multiverses into a sacred timeline. The Time Keepers from then on maintained the proper flow of time. In a 1950s style animation, we see a yellow bow tie man display how variants work. By slight divergences in the timeline, you can create a branch timeline. In this short, we see one of the variants causing what Miss Minutes says may be an uprising. In the animation, it features bluish looking beings that resemble the Kree, battling these purple figures with shapes in the back similar to those on Titan's ships. May this allude to a prior battle between the two? Who knows? But let's move on. The act of branching off the sacred timeline is considered a Nexus event. In WandaVision, we heard the term Nexus used as well, as that show also dealt with multiple realities. In the comics, Wanda is a Nexus being, meaning she remains the same no matter what reality she is in. If a Nexus event occurs and the branch timeline goes unchecked, then we can get madness, leading to another multiversal war. This is definitely a nod to Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, which is also being written by Matt Waldron. This is when we are introduced to the Time Variance Authority, better known as the TVA, and its purpose. They are in charge of maintaining the proper flow of time as the timekeepers dictate, as well as prosecuting those who commit offenses against the flow of time. If a variant is unable to be reset within their timeline, they then must stand trial in front of the TVA. Miss Minutes reminds the audience to make sure they have their tickets. We see the other obnoxious guy from earlier state that he does not have a ticket, and we see an agent essentially erase his existence. Loki then frantically looks for his ticket and raises it up, and then we cut to the Loki title card intro. The letters in Loki flash in different fonts, similar to the promotional material. Further driving home the theme of the variant Lokis we will encounter in the series, I think each font is reflective of the different Lokis. Similar to the opening scene, we get a title card falling into place, stating that they are in Aix-en-Provence in France, please pardon my pronunciation, in the year 1549. Owen Wilson's character, Mobius M. Mobius, and some Minutemen investing what was a routine Nexus event, but has gone awry. There are a few dead Minutemen on the floor with consistent stab wounds that they attribute to a suspect that has been on a crime spree. They also notice the reset charge is missing. They then ask a child at the scene if they saw who committed the crime. Then the kid then points to the stained glass image behind them, depicting a scene of the devil. Mephisto confirmed. Just kidding. LOL. This is most likely Loki, as he is often pictured with horns. Loki is then brought before Justice Renslayer. Loki is called Loki Laufey's son, since he is the child of the frost giant Laufey. In actual Norse mythology, Laufey is Loki's mother, not father, and his father is another frost giant, Farbor. Loki is referred to as variant L1130 and is charged with violation 7-2089. Loki tells her that he's a god and he doesn't need to plead for anything. They then banter a bit, and Loki goes on his usual mischievous rants, but pieces together that the Avengers travel through time, which is how he was able to come in possession of the Tesseract, and that they should be the ones on trial. Justice Renslayer tells Loki that the Avengers traveling through time was meant to happen. His escape, however, was not. That is because, as we saw in EndGame, Steve Rogers traveled back in time to return all the stones. Loki then calls out some bullshit and attempts to use his powers. He doesn't realize the collar he is wearing inhibits his powers and is eventually found guilty and scheduled to be reset. Mobius then interjects and requests that Loki be released into his custody. Mobius and Loki then leave the courtroom on their way to Mobius's office, where we get a glimpse of the sprawling views of the TVA headquarters. Loki believes it's an illusion, but is told it's not. Mobius introduces himself to Loki. We first hear the term Mobius in EndGame when Tony discovers the secret to time travel involves an inverted Mobius strip. Mobius and Loki continue on their way when Loki mocks the purpose of the TVA and refers to the timekeepers as space lizards. And from his perspective, I'd have to agree, they do look like a giant space lizard. They make their way into Mobius's office, where he sits down with Loki and has a weird therapy session, digging into Loki's motivations and what his plans are if he were to return to his timeline. Mobius then pulls up a reel of Loki's greatest hits, if you will. We see events from the first Avengers film. We see the scene of him killing S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Phil Coulson. Feige decided to further cement that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not related to MCU canon, further by stating he is still dead. In the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Coulson is brought back by an experiment involving Kree DNA on the orders of director Nick Fury. We then see a flashback of Loki as a mysterious legend of D.B. Cooper. D.B. Cooper was a real-life unidentified suspect in an airline hijacking on November 24th, 1971, where the suspect got away with $200,000. Adjusted to today's money, would be totaling about $1.28 million. D.B. Cooper got away by jumping out of the plane and was never recovered. Only thing that was found were some of the bills from the cash he received. According to Loki, he lost a bet to Thor, and Heimdall is the one that assisted in his escape. Mobius then shows Loki some of the events that occur in Thor: The Dark World. The Loki variant in this series has not experienced these events yet. He sees how his scheming to try to set up Thor leads to the death of Frigga. Mobius continues to try to dive deeper into Loki's psyche to essentially get this Loki on a similar path of redemption as the main timeline Loki we saw in Infinity War. The therapy session is interrupted when Hunter B-15 reports they lost another unit, and Loki uses this as a way to make his escape. We see Loki take the remote that controls his collar and make his way to Casey, the receptionist we saw earlier, to retrieve the Tesseract. In his drawer, we see multiple Infinity Stones. Casey remarks they get a bunch of these, and some of the employees even use them as paperweights. This discovery is what sparks Loki's realization on how truly powerful the TVA is. Hunter B-15 comes in, and Loki makes his escape back into Mobius's office. While there, he decides to view more of his future. We see the death of Frigga in Thor 2 again, the death of Odin in Ragnarok when he refers to Loki and Thor as his sons. We see scenes of Loki and Thor in Ragnarok doing some brotherly bonding. We then fast forward to Infinity War, to the scene of Loki's death at the hands of Thanos. In a harrowing scene, Loki watches himself get choked out and eventually have his neck snapped by Thanos. As the film reel ends, he is laughing a bit hysterically. Hunter B-15 eventually catches up to him. They fight, and Loki eventually gets the upper hand on her and gives her a taste of her own medicine by messing with the time control collar he puts on her. Mobius catches up to Loki in his office, where they continue a bit of their unofficial therapy session. We find out that Infinity Stones are also useless in their conversation, as Loki states he tried to use it to no avail. So he asks Mobius, well, what happens to him now? Mobius debriefs Loki on the string of attacks on Minutemen in different time periods, and they want his help to capture the variant they are hunting. Loki asks why they need his help in particular, and that's when they reveal they're hunting another Loki variant. We cut to a new location with the same style title card that states Salina, Oklahoma in 1859. The Minutemen arrive on the scene and spot a device from the early 3rd millennium. They believe it's someone who time traveled to the past to discover oil to get rich. They decide to just leave a reset charge and call it a day. That's when a cloaked figure is spotted with a lamp in the distance and sets the whole field on fire, burning the Minutemen and sealing the reset charge before it is activated. With that, the episode comes to an end. I enjoyed this pilot and I'm excited to see where the series goes next. I do believe the cloaked figure at the end of the scene is Lady Loki. As it was announced that Sophia DiMartino has been cast in an undisclosed role, I believe that is the character she will be playing in this series. Who do you think the mystery variant was at the end of this episode? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified when new videos drop. See you next time. Bye!